Right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, which is part of the Hammersmith and Fulham's Growth for SMEs and Fit to Bid workshops. So it's all sponsored by Hammersmith and Fulham. I'm Tony Mulvale. I'm your host today, talking about project management for bids and tenders. I can see we've got a few people still popping in. It's just after 10 o'clock, so it's about 3 minutes past 10. So this session will be recorded today, and I look forward to working with you through the next hour to talk about project management and the way you can use project management skills to support your bids with local authorities. So a little bit about me. I am a lecturer at the University of West London. I teach a consultancy module along with project management at master's level. I am a member of the Association for Project Management, part of the Park Royal Business Group and the advisory board there, and I run my own consultancy called Planning for the Best, as well as working with Branduin to deliver sessions like this to smaller businesses in West London. So welcome. It's great that everybody's here. This will be a fairly interactive session today as well. So there'll be an opportunity to put your answers to questions in the chat as well and follow up on that. So it's not meant to be me just broadcasting to you. It's an opportunity for you to put some feedback into the box as well. And without much further ado, because we've only got an hour this morning, the agenda is to cover project management. So what is it about? How do you use it to support your bid? Topics on project management and project planning, a little bit on business continuity planning or BCP, which is important, particularly when you want to demonstrate to companies that you can run your business in the event of an outage, and then any Q&A on the back of that. So this is all part of the Branduin Fit to Bid offering. This is enabling you to bid, win, and deliver bigger and better contracts with local authorities, with tier one or main contractors, depending on where you fit into the supply chain. So these opportunities enable you to engage with the procurement, to work on building up your capabilities, and we offer the one-to-one support in addition to these webinars. So if you want the one-to-one support, please do contact Noshia. Details will be at the end of that. We look at your bidding skills, and we look at how you can build up your sales team and deliver tender advice. It's all part of the package sponsored by the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. And first question this morning is, what is project management? And the Association for Project Management, the Project Management Institute, Prince 2, they all have definitions of what it might be. But as Dr. Martin Barnes said, at its most fundamental, project management is about people getting things done. And the key to that is to know what we mean by that, because getting things done, we want to do them in an organized way. We want to make sure that we're clear about our objectives and our outcomes. So what do we need to do as part of that? Well, as project managers, we combine these processes, method, skills, knowledge, experience into a core set of activities that enable us to define, measure, monitor, and deliver our projects on time and to budget. So we will sit down and decide with the client what is the outcome that the client wants, or if we're bidding for work, we'll have read the tender document and we'll look at what is it the client wants. So our project charter, or our project bid, if you like, will be what is it we're delivering for the client and how are we going to do that. So we take those items and we look at what does that mean and how do we understand the constraints and the costs associated with it. So it's very challenging for us sometimes to look at that and say, is this a 6-month project? Is it a 9-month project? What are our constraints? What do we need to do on time? What's it going to cost us to do this? And then we're looking at this being a project which is different from a business process. So some people might run projects for 3 years, which are managing people into work is one of these activities where there might be a 3-year project to move 100 people from long-term unemployment into work. That's a 3-year project. But the intermittent piece along with that is getting everybody one by one through that process. And that's a kind of a project, whereas a business process is going to be something we do every day and repeat that. So if we're in the food manufacturing business and we're making pita bread, then we'll have machines and processes that every day turn out substantial numbers of pita bread for sale in the market. But we will be monitoring how many have we made, how much has it cost us, how much are we making, what are the numbers that are going on. So that's our ongoing processes and our day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month management activities. And one of the key things that project managers need are both the business skills and the people management skills. So a lot of the project management training talks about skills around people management, conflict resolution, management models, but also how to deal with your business partners and how to manage your stakeholders, engage with the relevant people in the business. So when we come down to the smaller business, the SME, people are project managers in their businesses. And whenever you're running a particular project or you're thinking about doing that piece of client work, it is a project. So you might be looking at windows to be manufactured and installed for a specific fit, doing a roofing installation. That is a project because you need to know how big's the roof, how many tiles am I going to use? Does the client want slate or do they want steel? What's the cost of that? So each type of activity is a project, and as a business owner you're already running these projects, so you're already familiar with some of the ideas and the tasks that need to be done. And this is webinars about giving you those skills to put that all together into a package, and we keep our businesses going as well. So as business owners we do a lot more than just the project management. We manage the operations, we do our accounting, we have HR and people management, we do procurement potentially. And so there's a lot of activity that you in a small business will be performing that cover all of these different areas. And to get your projects done, you're going to be using project management skills to do that. If it's logistics and you want to implement a new way of delivering your product, so you might say, today I have 3 diesel vans, next month I want to implement 3 electric vans. How would I go about doing that? Well, that's a project to think about. What's the outcome I want? What sort of vehicles do I want to have? What are the costs of doing that? What size of van do I need? So all of that logistics is going to be about thinking about the project to get those new vans on site. How do I retire the old vans? All of that is a project activity. Supply chains. So this is, how do I integrate myself into a supply chain? Do I manufacture the plastic wrappers for the pita bread that I talked about earlier? So I'm going to supply the packaging for this particular company who's making the pita bread, but I might do that for a number of different companies. So how do I make sure that I can manage the different requirements for the different customers, and how do I get myself into a new supply chain when I want to add another customer? Technology is a classic project management activity, along with construction. Construction has a lot of health and safety and details associated with it, and can be quite intense in terms of the way the projects are managed, but that is a reflection of the type of business and the way that things need to be done in the right order. So that's some ideas about you. If you're in a small business and you're in one of these industries, you're probably already doing project management. And as I said, this is about giving you some of the skills to help you improve in that area. So why do we have project management for bid writing? It matters because oftentimes clients will be looking for information that's structured and ordered, and it demonstrates that you've got those processes in place to protect your business, but also it demonstrates to the client that you understand how the project works, the steps that need to be taken, and how to organize and implement the bid. So that organization and methodical approach is key to demonstrating to the client that you understand how you are going to deliver your product as part of the bid, or your service as part of the bid. That's the important part there. And also with your project management, one of the topics we talk about is assessing and managing your project risk. So this might be a new project for a client, and we need to think about, well, what's the risk associated with doing this project? So risk is all about what are the things that could happen in the future that might stop our project from being done successfully. And a classic example of risks are Heathrow Terminal 2, when they were knocking that terminal down. They had no plans for the wiring, for the plumbing, or for any of the kind of infrastructure inside the building. So they had to work on the basis that this is a high-risk project, that we could find electrics that are still alive, we could find plumbing that's not been switched off. So they had to plan around all of that, and they did that as part of their risk assessment at the beginning of the project. What are the risks? What are the things we'll find? How will we deal with them when the project is in flight? Construction projects have risks. Recently in Hammersmith, when they were doing some building down there by the river, there's unexploded World War II ordnance in the mud in the Thames. So there's a project around. We know that's a risk to the project, so we need to deal with it, and we need to manage it effectively. So those risks, you need to think about them as to what's going to happen in the future. And also, part of this is that you can document what you've done, and you can demonstrate that you have delivered projects successfully, and you're using historical data to prove that in future bids as well. So it becomes a self-fulfilling, reinforcing quality of delivery. We've done this before, we know how to do this, here's the data that supports it. And it ultimately gives our clients certainty that you understand what you're doing. So you've got the data, you've organized it in a way that presents knowledge of how you do things to the client, and that information is critical to you in successfully bidding for the work. And just as a quick show of hands, if you just pop in the chat, how many of you use a formal project management approach? You can just put yes into the chat if you do. What I mean by formal project management approach is something where you've documented your project management activities. How do we define a project? How do we implement a project? How do we make sure that we close out a project? Does anybody have a formal project management approach? Yep. Okay. One yes. Which is not unexpected. Typically in smaller businesses, we build up our expertise and we don't have anything formal in place. But if we are bidding for work with larger organizations, we do need to have something that documents how we go about doing our project management. Okay. Right, okay. Moving on, the business benefits. One of the things that we need to think about is, how does this bid support our business strategy? And if it doesn't support our strategy, why are we making this bid? And this is important because we need to look at the cost and benefit of this. Do the benefits that we're going to provide for our business outweigh the costs of doing the particular project? And we're talking about business benefits such as, are we going to generate a new niche solution? Do we improve our reputation for quality and reliability? Is it going to open up new sales channels for us and increase channels or increase sales depending on, how we are doing this? Maybe if we're bidding for a piece of work and we win that particular tender, we can demonstrate to other clients that we have a live product and that people are using it through the feedback we receive. Costs involved with this could be setting up assembly lines, building factories, training, hiring staff, logistics, and other activities involved in that. So we do need to do this at the front of the process to make sure that what we're doing is going to support our business and bring benefit to the business in the longer term. One of the sort of jokes about technology firms in the .com bubble was that they would sell their products at a loss and catch up on the loss with the volumes that they were going to generate. And that was one of the issues with technology companies, where they were loss making from the beginning and they never made money in the long term. So as a business, we want to make sure that we've got the right sort of cash flow and the right strategy in place, and that these bids that we're working on are going to support us in delivering on our business strategy. So that's an important part of that. And that's always a question to ask ourselves at the start of the process. Is this the right sort of bid for us as a company in the strategy that we're pursuing? And if it isn't, maybe it's okay because we are changing our strategy. But if we are going to say we want to make this bid, then it's a conscious decision to change the overall strategy for the company as well. So that's something to bear in mind when you're bidding for work. So when we're preparing to bid, there's a lot of thoughts here around, what do you need to do? Does the bid align with your value proposition? So are you consistent with that value proposition? Does it make sense to the customer when you're talking to them? What does the client need? Have you thought about what the client needs, and what market research did you conduct to make sure that you understand the market that you're in and the competitors and the different options that are out there? One question to ask yourself as well is, can you afford to win this bid? It might sound a bit odd, winning bids is a good thing. We're going to increase our sales and we're going to generate more revenue, but it could be that the cost of implementing this solution is too high for us, and we just can't afford to do that at the stage we're at. But that might open up other questions around, well, how would you fund that in terms of the financial analysis? So again, you need to delve into this and look at it in more detail, say, what's the size of the bid relative to our turnover? Can we afford to do this? And what risk does the bid present to your company as well? So risks are around, can we afford to do this? What could go wrong? What's the damage that could be reputationally or commercially to us as a result of getting this wrong? Are there clear financial benefits? How are you going to oversee the bid if you win it? So what's the project plan? What's the process you're going to use? What structures do you need as well to control costs and realize benefits? And particularly in the construction industry, that's all about making sure that you're understanding all the variances in the contract that you're on top of, change requests, and that you're able to get the benefits you said you would get. And one of the key things that this bidding process is about, it's not just about what are the benefits from the bid for you, but it's for the client as well. And in the bid strategy workshops that you would have had from Nosha earlier on in the piece, part of the strategy there is to say, what are you going to deliver for the client? So you need to be able to put in place a project that delivers those benefits for the client as well as for you. And you need to manage both of those when you're preparing to bid for this. And you need to be clear in your understanding of what you will deliver in terms of benefits for both you and for the client. Just as a question at the moment, how do people manage your bids? Does anybody have a process for managing bids, or do you not bid at this point in time, or are you just thinking about bidding? Okay, so don't bid at this time. We have talked about it, Kristen, thinking about bidding, thinking of doing in the future. Yeah, so that's part of the background to these sessions with Branduin and with the Hammersmith and Fulham Council about giving the skills and the confidence to bid for local authority work. One of the key drivers for local authorities at the moment is that they should spend £1 in 3 on local businesses, because it's shown to generate income and revenue inside the borough. So there is an opportunity here, and you might think, oh well, some of these bids, it always goes to the big players. Well, actually, the local authorities are mandated to spend this £1 in 3, so there are opportunities there. So it's always good to get your skills together and book the one-to-one sessions to make that happen. So what do we need for your bid. And this is all about, you know, what does your client want? What information do you need to provide? What are your charges for the bid? So when we think about the information you need to provide, what's the client asking for? What have they said in the bid, in the tender document, that you need to provide? Is it, you know, a set of specifics around lighting, around electrical installations, or could it be a service? So it could be a software service, such as a one of the services being implemented recently in Hammersmith and Fulham is the delivery service, where you can shop locally online and somebody will come and collect your goods from that shop and then deliver them to your doorstep. And that's something that's being done locally and enables small businesses to deliver to the council, and the council is willing to support that because it's generating revenue in the council. But how would you do that? Think about your charges and think about your costs as well, and what sort of margin are you making on this? This talks to the financials of it, and it's really important that you understand, okay, if I'm going to be charging this for this particular bid, what's my gross margin and what are my costs? Think about the materials, equipment, crew that you need as well. So oftentimes tenders will ask you to say, what sort of material will you use? What sort of equipment do you need? What sort of staff do you need to make this happen? If it's a building process, are you going to be subbing this out? So you need to be clear about that in your answers. Think about who's going to be on your team as well. So do I need to have a project management person? Do I need to have an administration person who's going to support this activity? Because you might find that as the owner, you end up doing 20 hours extra a week to support this activity because you bid for it and won it. And it may be better to hire somebody who's an experienced administrator who can take on that 20 hours a week for you and do it in a more focused way. If you are ordering equipment that you need to support a bid, when is it going to be ready? Because that drives the deadline for when you can start work as well. And oftentimes there's a gap between bidding for the work and the tender being awarded, and you may have to wait for that, and then you can say, okay, well, we can start, you know, so many months after this has completed. But that needs to be clear in your mind as to when am I going to have the equipment I need in order to be able to deliver on this. And another thing to keep an eye on is the deadline for the bid. Like all things in life, these deadlines can creep up on us, and it takes a good amount of time to sit down and do this work for the bid. You know, you need to allow a few days for your bid to be completed and documented and all the supporting material put together. So try not to leave it to the last minute. Try to have it ready at least a week in advance, and make sure that you've got all the documentation together so you can review it, edit it, and submit a formal professional document for people. What other information do you need? It may be that you might need to provide them with Gantt charts, with risk logs, with price cards, rate cards, things like this, depending on the type of the bid that you are looking to win. So all of that information needs to be documented. And if you are going to be putting this into a package in terms of additional documentation, it's always good to use your branding and have branded documents with your logos and your email addresses and things like this embedded in the documents, because it helps to reinforce the message of who you are. So on top of this, you know, if you are submitting supplemental information, look at your branding and make sure that your branding and your formatting and your fonts and text and all of this is consistent across the additional documentation you provide, because that looks more professional. If the documentation looks disjointed, then that reflects on the person viewing it as, oh, this might be not the sort of person we want to deal with, because the quality of the documentation isn't as good. So in all of this, there's a layer of quality around your documentation as well. With our methodology, the structure to this is about how we are going to do the project. So we have a way of saying we're going to define the requirements, we're going to work on the implementation schedule, and we're going to deliver it, handover, training, and embed the product or service into the client organization. And then we're going to transfer it to a run the business function. And that lays out the tasks, the order that they're needed in, and who's going to be doing what and when. You've got a clear set of risks and potential actions as well. You've got data from your previous project, and you're following a standard industry approach to getting projects done. And you might be using Prince 2, you might use Agile, you might use other methods depending on the industry you're in, but they all have standard approaches. And that puts the building blocks in place as well, because you know what needs to be done and you know when it needs to be done, and you're clear about what's happening when with the client, because part of this is going to be communicating back to your client to say this is what's going on. Documentation for changes. This is one of the things you need to think about on the grounds that you've won the tender. Now you're going to be delivering the tender, and it's like, how do we manage change? And that's going to be really important, because change and cost control is one area where costs can get out of hand. And if you're not managing them tightly, you can end up losing money on the contract because of change. And so you need to understand what's driving the change. How are you going to make the change? How are you going to document the change? And that needs to be agreed between you and the client. If you're working in construction, there tends to be very formal processes for this. On larger constructions, in technology and in other areas, it tends to be less formal, but you still need to have that documentation in place that says, this is what we need, this is why we need it, and this is who's going to make the change. And it's important to know, are you going to get paid for the change, or is it going to affect your budget? These are the things you need to track, because if the client's asked for a change, then normally you can ask the client to pay for the change. But if you need to make the change, then it's going to affect you, because you're going to have to do rework, or you're doing additional work that's not been included in the scope of that. So you need to be clear about variations in the contract, how they're managed, and how you pay for them. And looking at the client and how do they benefit, well, the client gets a high quality outcome from you. You've said you were going to deliver this, you've delivered what you said you would, and you've got the evidence to back it up. And you can demonstrate to the client that your product and services meet their expectations. And that enables the client to say, yes, they did what they said they would do, and I've got the product I want. And that is good in terms of the way that we manage our projects and make sure that we deliver what's needed. And then we've got the opportunity to talk to the client and say, okay, can you give us a testimonial to demonstrate your commitment to that? How does our business benefit? Well, first one is that we're generating additional revenue. So we can show the return on the investment for this particular project. We can say that we did this project and we're now increasing our revenues by 25%, and we're seeing a gross margin of 40% on that. So we can start to manage our business more effectively and talk about the real numbers from these projects that we're doing. Another benefit we get is we can use this as a case study for future work. So we can say, we've done this project, this is how we did it. We can put it up on our website. We can use it on LinkedIn and other social media to demonstrate that this is what we've done, and that we've got a history there with that record of the work being done, and we've got testimonials from the client. And it also enhances your reputation for that reliability and quality, that you've delivered a project and you've got the evidence to support it. And those testimonials and references become, as I said earlier, that self-fulfilling feedback loop of, we've done a good job, here's why we did a good job, and this is how we support our next bid with that information. So just a quick question here. How do people get feedback from their clients? Does everybody have a process where they talk to their clients to get feedback from them about the products or services they've delivered? Survey monkey, usually at the end. lots of different ways of doing it. Sometimes we can, yeah, Sean, that's a good one, mailing clients 2 weeks after sales for reviews and feedback, because that also helps the client, gives them a couple of weeks to think about things. There's nothing worse than if you purchase a product online and when it arrives, the provider wants to know, what did you think of the product? Well, I've only just got the box. I don't know what it's like at the moment. But if you wait for a couple of weeks and send them something, they're more likely to have used it and said, yes, I'll give you some reviews at that point. So that's good. Feedback is scary using SurveyMonkey. Some companies use Trustpilot and other online testimonial sites like that, just to say, if you've liked what we did, please go to Trustpilot and leave us a review. Here's a link. Sometimes putting the link in the email, clients are more likely to click on that and leave you the testimonial. Yeah, at the end, getting feedback is probably the best time to do that, but also during the process as well. You should be stating up front when you start working with the client, we're going to do this project, and at the end, it would be good to get a testimonial from you when we've delivered the project, and that sets in mind for the client that yes, they'll be doing this as the process proceeds. So when it comes to the end, it's not quite a surprise for them. I mean, people know that being asked for testimonial is something that they'll probably happen along the way, but if you're explicit about it and you communicate to them that once we're done, I'd like some feedback, then that what helps to make that process smoother. And looking at our project planning and why it matters for our bid writing, some of the challenges we see are trying to put in place the terms around milestones and what they mean. So we have milestones. So that's about our start dates and deadline dates, and milestones. As you'll appreciate, there's a milestone in Ealing Common that says we're now 9 miles from London. But if we think about that, that's telling us that these are the key dates that we need to meet in order to deliver our project. On construction sites and big builds, there might be hundreds of these tasks that need to be done, and there'll be milestones, and there'll be lots of technical critical path analysis that looks at, if tasks are late, what's the knock-on effect of the project. For some of you with smaller projects that you need to deliver, you don't need formal project management software, but you do need to say, if there are blocks of work that can be done, when do we need to start them and when do we need to finish them? And we can be relatively agile with our project plan using tools like Microsoft Project, or there's online tools such as Jira that people use, or Trello, which give an understanding of what needs to be done and when, but the dates are the most important thing. What is this piece of work and what's the milestone for getting this done? So if our, project is to build a house, then the first milestone is to get planning permission to do the build based on the plan. So that could be the big milestone, but the first piece that we need to meet is the deadline for doing the drawings and completing them for submission for planning permission. So that might be the first milestone. The big milestone is getting the planning permission, and then then starting work. So getting the foundations complete might be the next milestone. Getting the infrastructure built would be the next milestone. Getting the roof on would be the milestone after that, and so on and so forth. So these are the key things that need to happen, and the sort of timing that we think we need to have them to happen. So that's the milestones and how we put them together. We talk about dependencies, and these are the things that you need to have in place in order to start work. So if you're the builder and you're contracted to go and do the house build, you need to make sure that planning permissions in place. So you're relying on the client to have done all the work with their architects and with the planners, and to have received the formal planning permission in order for you to start work. But if you're the management contractor on the project, then you probably expect that the client has signed up to a contract and has agreed to the build as part of your process. So there are different dependencies depending on where you are in the hierarchy of events in the project. Assumptions, these are things that we expect to see or not to see when we start work. In the house building example, as the builder, I might be expecting to arrive on an empty lot and start work, because that's what I've been told. So my assumption is I'll turn up, the lot will be empty and I'll be able to start work. But if I turn up and it's a a brownfield site and it's not been fully cleared, then that might have been something where the management contractor didn't tell us that they need to do the site clearance beforehand. And so we had to make these assumptions explicit. So what I would say is, if I'm the builder and I'm coming in, I'm saying to the management contractor, my assumption is that when I get to the site, it's going to be cleared for me to be able to start work. So that's something that we want to be done and we assume will be done as part of the process. And there's slight difference between the assumption and the dependency there. And then our risks, these are things that might affect the project timeline. So we talk about risk a lot as project managers, because project management is about managing risk. And in ISO 9001 as well, there are risk-based topics that they talk about in that space, where it's all about managing risk effectively to deliver the right product and the right service. And issues. And once our project starts and things start to go wrong or need to be resolved, then this is something that's happened and we need to come up with a solution for that particular problem. So if we are going to, and I've seen this as a live example where I'm digging a new pipe conduit for plumbing, and I've got to go and dig the trench to put the new pipe in. At the start of the project, there's a risk that I don't have the drawings for the electrics in the car park, and that I might hit the one of the electric supply cables. When my digger's there, they hit the electric supply cable, all the power goes off in the building, and now I've got an issue. So what do I need to do? What are the steps I'm going to take to solve that problem? So work stops, we inspect what's happened, we make sure the power's reconnected, and then we look at how are we going to redig our trench based on the fact that we found this unexpected cable under the car park. So these are the sorts of things that could go wrong, and when it's gone wrong, what are we doing to fix that? And we should have an issue log that said, this is what happened, this was the situation, and this is what we did to fix it. And particularly if we're working with a client who wants to know about these issues, we'll be telling them what we did to fix it and how, and we'll be making sure that it's fixed to their satisfaction. What we want to do as part of that communication process is say, is this done the way you would like it to be done? And then our steps to success, it's talking about the scope. Scope is what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. So it's really important that you're clear about what activities you will perform and what activities you won't perform. And you know, in the building example, if I'm the electrician, I am going to do the electricals. I'm not going to do the plumbing. That's just a statement of fact, but that is what I am going to do. But it may be that I don't do certain types of electrical work. So I don't do the main connection to your house piece of the electrics, but I do all the entire internal wiring. Again, you need to be clear with the client about that, because you can say, I'm not qualified or not certified to do the mains connection. You need somebody else to do that as part of the process. I can help you with someone, but that's part of that process about what you can and cannot do, and being really clear and upfront about that. Goals. So these goals determine how you get paid in full for the contract. So if you achieve the goals, then you should get paid. And again, falling back on the building example, you know, a certain percentage will be held back for snagging and finishing works. And you need to make sure as a builder, to get your full payment, that you complete all of those little pieces of snagging. Otherwise, you could miss out on 5% of your contract. Your estimates, this is your initial quote for the work. So this is saying how much I think this will cost based on previous projects and time and materials I'm going to spend to do this. And then the plan, we're going to detail out the steps, the costs, times, materials built into this, along with our assumptions, dependencies, and milestones. So we're going to build up a Gantt chart and lay that out that says this is what it looks like. And then we deliver our product, and involved in delivery could be training, there could be installation, there could be ongoing maintenance and support that needs to be handed over. So there's steps around what does that mean for the product and how do you deliver it for the client. And then there's a review process, and part of that is that post-implementation review. Did you get paid the full amount? Why or why not? And you know, what sort of follow-up work did you need to do as well, particularly in product related deliveries, if you have to do rework, if you've got warranties or recalls or other activities like this, you need to understand what's driving that warranty work, what's driving those recalls. Is there something going on that we need to improve in terms of the quality of our product in order to get a better product out there for next time? So these are some of the things to think about in the process. Conscious of time, with our Gantt charts, this is something that you can create. The link here to vertex42.com. You can go into Excel today and you can create a Gantt chart that looks like this, and it will lay out the weeks in your plan and put in there, and you can put in there your tasks, your start dates and your end dates and who they're assigned to. You can use this to generate an example Gantt chart for your projects. It's a fairly simple way to do that, and it gives you some opportunity to play with that, and it's built into the search function in Excel, so you can just open that up as a tool inside there. And it's going to be a high level plan with your milestones, the key tasks and the owners, and this is sufficient, as I say, if you're bidding for a piece of work. So this is what our project will look like. This is the scope and the shape that it will take. So I do recommend using that if you're just looking to learn how to play with Gantt charts. Tasks. One of the things we need to think about when we're putting our tasks together is how long is each task going to take? Who's going to do the work? What order do the tasks need to be done in? And how do we ensure a quality outcome? And quality is always subjective, but it's about, if I'm installing a bathroom and the clients ask for the cheapest to deliver equipment, then we try and deliver the best pieces of bathroom equipment at the prices they've given us. But as the client has a bigger budget, then we can deliver better quality products, and we need to be clear about what does better quality mean. In the construction industry, that's about materials, it's about qualifications, and it's about making sure that we measure the outcome in terms of so for example, with concrete, we can say we've got the right sort of concrete and we've got the right quality of concrete, and we send it off to the lab for testing. It comes back and says, yes, this concrete is to the right strength with the right mix of aggregates in there. And that's how we demonstrate that we've got the right quality of concrete. What could go wrong? These are all your risks. This is about your risk log. This is the key things to think about is what could delay the work. The client's not ready, materials not on time. What sort of impact is that going to have? Is it going to make a major delay? Is it going to be, maybe a 1 week, 2 week delay in a project, or is it going to be a couple of days? How likely is the delay to occur? So what could go wrong? Would it go wrong often, always, sometimes, rarely? And what are the steps you're going to take to manage that delay? And this is how you can demonstrate to the client that you understand the process, you understand the risks involved, and also the final step in that is to say, when you are going to communicate delays to the client, you need to establish with the client, what do they expect? Do they expect to be told as soon as you know, or do they expect you to come back with an estimate and say, we've discovered this, we've got this risk, and now it's becoming an issue. When do we communicate it to you? So that's important to establish as well. Client engagement. This is a sort of power interest grid that enables you to sit down and think about who are the people that are involved in our project that are the stakeholders. And for TfL, when they're doing their build for the Elizabeth line, they identified 110 individual stakeholders that they broke down into, I think it was about 10 or 11 groups of stakeholders so they could manage them more effectively. But this is important information to sit down and think about, because it tells you who the people are that you need to communicate and deal with regularly, keep updated. That's potentially going to be the client in your case. It could be other people that the client have asked to be involved in the process, and how are you going to update them and communicate with them. Whereas if we have a community interest group who's involved in a particular project that we're building, but they're not part of the decision-making body, but you might want to keep them informed. So you might want to have newsletters or emails or other ways of communicating with them to let them know what's happening. So you need to think about that, and you need to look at, who are the supporters for your projects. And I think about these ones in the high influence, low interest bracket as potential submarines who might pop up to try and sink your project. And so you need to look at who are the other people involved with this, particularly if it's a local authority contract and there are politics involved in it. Are there politics that could affect your project where some of the stakeholders have more influence over things and are not fully engaged? So how do you keep these people on side and keep them in your communication loop? That is critical as part of the success there. Clients like to be communicated with. So how are you going to communicate to them? What are you going to tell them and when? And how are you going to align with their management approach? So some clients have a very sort of standard waterfall management approach. They meet once a month, they do steering committees, they do working groups, and you need to fit in with that. But you might be a bit more agile with your approach, but you need to make sure that your communication fits with their management approach. You can't change the client organization. You need to make sure that you work effectively with them with the communication. So always making sure that you've agreed what you're going to tell them and when up front, and then that you deliver to that over the cycle of your project. And do people talk to their clients at the moment? Do you have regular communication with clients, and how do you do it? That's a kind of takeaway to consider as part of the process. Getting to the end. So you finish the project. That's great. I've delivered my service, I've created my product, it's now ready for the client to use. But to make sure that it is ready, I need to sit down with the client and say to the client, this is what we said we were going to do. This is what we've done. This is a handover that's happened. These are the steps we've taken to deliver the project. Do you agree that we're done? And it's really important to have that meeting at the end of your contract to make sure that the client says, yes, we're done. And part of that is it gives you a reference point. So we've had the meeting, we've documented it, we've sent the email to the client or the formal letter to the client saying that we are done. And that protects us then in case of future dispute where the client comes back and says, we didn't do this, you didn't do this. You can point to the letter and say, we asked about this and we raised that as something that we said hadn't been done and you agreed that it didn't need to be done. It also helps you to get your final project payment. So if there is a 5% retention clause on pending final pieces of work being signed off, then you get that piece of work, that piece of payment back. You can ask for a reference at that point. So you can say, look, we've done the work. Could you give us that testimonial we talked about earlier on in the process? And you've got documented evidence. So you've got that as a formal contract closure, and you can put that in the pile and say, yep, we've done that. It's all finished. So that's the sort of final closure piece. What do we do afterwards? We sit down and we think about, what do we learn from this? How do we make our next contract better? And this is a kind of 4-step process. It's like the ISO 9001 plan, do, check, act activity. It's like we're saying, so what happened as a result of this? So we've done something, we're checking on it to say, okay, so what happened? What are the facts? What were the outcomes from this project based on the information we have? And then we step through these individually. We don't try and do it all at once. We just talk about what worked well. So what did work well on this project? What should we keep doing? What could we do differently? And discuss those, document those. We look at how could we improve? So were there issues? What do we do to solve them? Was there a root cause for some of these things? What do we need to change? And should we stop doing things? Equally important sometimes is to say we don't actually need to do this because it doesn't add any value and it just causes delays. So then we can produce our conclusions, which is our documentation around what did we learn, what do we need to change, what do we keep doing, what are the next challenges we face, and then how do we improve our project planning? And that's the kind of act piece, is to say, now that we've checked on this, how do we act on this to then feed it back into our planning process? Does everybody do a post-implementation review with their projects? as a question. Yep, Shanika does. That's great. That helps, again, build up that learning in your organization and feedback the success. But okay, thanks, Serena. Yep, it is really helpful. And projects I've worked on in the past, I worked on a project which took us, like 8 months to deliver, and it was a very long process, very complicated. It was new, and we had a couple of post-implementation reviews, and by the time we'd finished all of that, we were able to turn it into a run the business process that could be completed in 4 weeks. So it gives you an example of how you can learn, how you can build new ways of doing things, and then you can turn it into more of a turnkey solution for people rather than a one-off learning from you every single time we do things. Christian, mostly yes, but sometimes the client does not want to spend the time. I would say, Christian, this is, it's sometimes a bit challenging if the clients don't want to do that, but I would suggest that you still do it as a discipline internally, even if the client doesn't want to participate. It can help you as the business to grow and learn and do better next time. Although, yes, if the client doesn't want to spend the time, sometimes that's about convincing them that it's an important activity for them as well as for you. Particularly if you're looking to get another contract with the client, something I do recommend people do is to say, look, we need to sit down and look at this and make sure we're clear about what's happened, because then you can also bring up any challenges the client might not have talked about on the project, and you can get them to be open and transparent about the challenges that they face with this in a constructive and collaborative way, saying these are the things that happen, and we think this could be done differently this way, and it enables you to build a better relationship with the client and to deliver better quality products with them. But yes, sometimes clients just don't want to do that, and that's just a challenge in doing business. And planning our responses, so business continuity planning. This is all about the level of risk that you want to take to keep your business going. So it's about knowing what your key roles are, who does what, do you have the emergency contact details, what are your emergency plans, and what equipment do you need if things go wrong. So if you've got your phone, here's my phone, it has my two-factor authentication on it. If I drop my phone down the drain when I step out of my house today, I'll no longer be able to log into half of my applications. That could be a problem for me. So how am I going to get around that? So what's my emergency plan for that? Well, I've got my backup email. So I've got my phone and I've got my email. So I know that while I'm waiting for my new phone, I'm going to have to use my email to do that. Yeah, I'm just seeing your chat there, Christian. Yes, so clients can be ill-disciplined in their project approach as well. When we're talking about BCP as well, this is will the event cause us to go broke? So will it affect our finances? Will our reputation be affected for our next bid? Are there going to be late penalties if we can't do the work on time? Can we get fined for this? And health and safety, always a big consideration. Are we complying with the law? And I would say now we need to add the GDPR activity into that as well to make sure that we're not breaking the global data protection regulations as well. So that's something else we need to keep in mind as part of our BCP. And just getting towards the end of this, just looking at our bids and tenders portal. So through capital e-sourcing, Hammersmith and Fulham have all of their contracts on there. So if you want to log into that, set yourself up an account, it's good to do that, just to look at what opportunities are there for Hammersmith and Fulham. There's also the London Tenders portal, and there's procontractduenorth.com through Proactis. All of these websites basically want you to register with them so that you are notified of tenders that might fit your requirements. But it's sometimes helpful to go in there and just look at what local authorities are providing in terms of tenders and what might you need to do in order to be able to bid for this, because it can help you to shape up your thinking about planning and being ready to bid for the next piece of work. And these are good websites to be with. I get an email from Proactis every day telling me about all of the consulting opportunities are out there from a project management perspective. So it's good to see that, and just keep an eye on what's happening in the market as well, because it generates some familiarity with what's happening out there. With our events, so we're here today, 21st of April, with the project management piece. In a couple of weeks' time, there's the marketing for tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. That's the business to business workshop. 19th of May is going to be the circular economy and how do we build up these key relationships based on our business model canvas. And 8th of June, writing the public sector bids and tenders. That's scheduled for that particular piece of June. And the live event that we have at the Hammersmith and Fulham Town Hall, which is in King Street, will be a Meet the Buyer event where you actually be able to go and meet live with departments from Hammersmith and Fulham on the day. And that's enables you to talk to the people who will be procuring services and products from your business. And that's a great way to get into some of the details about what these people are like. You get to know them and understand them better, and it's a great opportunity to find out more about how the process works. You can sign up for that on Eventbrite. If you've signed up to the program, you will get that link as well, but do keep that in mind. If you are interested in that, that would be that's a great opportunity to learn more about. I'll just pop that in the chat as well, about how bids and tenders work in Hammersmith and Fulham. So that's most of the topic for today. We're just coming up to 11 o'clock. Do sign up for the one-to-one advisory support. There are 80 companies. You can get 2 hours of support and tender advice, and looking at how to build a tender submission plan, looking at your value proposition, looking at the basics you need to do this. And as we talked about in the bid writing workshops, it's an art and a science. There are things that you can do, but there's a specific way you need to approach your bid writing. If you want to book a one-to-one advice session, then you can contact Noshia at branduin.co.uk. Noshia will put you on the list and make sure that one of our advisors talks to you to put you on the one-to-one list. And then we've got the local authority procurement, the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, large private sector buyers. You'll be able to submit an expression of interest for those. And your action plan from today. If you have an action plan, that would be great to think about, what happens next and what would you like to do coming out of this. And it's your self-contract accountable. This is what I want to deliver. And, please do take that away from today. What would I do next? And just to say, thanks very much for coming along today. This, as I said, is all part of the Fit to Bid, Ready to Supply work that Branduin are doing with Hammersmith and Fulham. If you've got any questions, you can mail me, tonym@branduin.co.uk. Don't forget to save the chat in case you want to keep that for later on, with that link and with those email addresses there. And I look forward to seeing your success in the future. So thanks, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thanks all. Thanks, Shanika. Have a great day too. Thank you. Thanks, Christian.